Hi guys, Natalie here. Thanks for joining us. It's not going to be the energetic Natalie. I'm really sorry. It probably will be because it'll make me mad at points, I'm sure. But Natalie unfortunately came down with COVID, so if I'm a bit like chesty or lethargic, please do bear with us. Rich is here though. He's going to spill all the tea. We're going to spill the tea together. Rich, thanks for joining us.
No worries, mate. I hope you're feeling a little bit better.
Yeah. This has been. I've wanted to do this. I mean, I spoke to Vix earlier on saying, "Oh, I feel really bad, but I really want to do this." And I think let's just get straight into it because they've released some news. They've released some news, guys. I think probably just in time for this podcast. Let's say because Thursday we go for it. Man United between the 16th and 19th of August are going to play pre-season. Woo! In Toulon in the French World Cup Women's Football Tournament, whatever. The teams that are in it are Manchester United, Bayern Munich, Barcelona, and Paris Saint-Germain. This is why we're a bit late because we were talking about this off air and then we ended up talking into different things. But for me, and people might say it's negative, okay, it's embarrassing. I think with the squad that we have currently, where we're at, the way that we sort of threw it away, Champions League qualification again, to play the best. I mean, if we qualified for the Champions League, we wouldn't even be playing these teams straight away anyway. But at least if you're playing them if you have to play Lyon I'd rather go play them then. I know it's not Lyon, but if you have to play Paris at a point, there's talk that City might have to play Real Madrid in round 2. At least it's in the real thing. This is just us going out there to get smashed 3 times, in my opinion. And I mean, I've seen Courtney Booth, I think her name is, tweeting, this might be a wake-up call, and that's what I am seeing it as, and that's what I'm thinking in my head. Mark's thinking, let's go out there and show the difference. What's your opinion on it, Rich? Like, Man United joining a tournament like this?
I think it's good. I think it's a no lose at the end of the day. Like, it's a pre-season competition, and like you say, the worst comes to worst, they're going to learn a lot about themselves. They're playing, I think it's PSG in the semi-final, and then they'll play one of the other two, whether it's a final or a third place playoff. So it's two good tests. It's two tests United have never had. I mean, the one caveat is it is pre-season and it's less than 3 weeks after the Euros end, so everybody's squads are probably. I mean, if Spain go quite far in the tournament, I'm not sure what Barcelona's squad's going to look like, given that most of their players will be at the Euros. Bayern Munich obviously have a lot of players at the Euros, as do PSG. Man United have quite a few, to be fair, probably not as many as the other three. So you might not even be facing sort of the strongest teams, but I still think it's good for them. I mean, I don't think they'll get battered in a pre-season game. I think it's just a good opportunity to go out there, spend some time away. I'm sure they'll do some team bonding and they'll get to play some really good teams. I mean, even I can't think off the top of my head who PSG have at the Euros and who might be left over in terms of which players might be available, and obviously depends which players go out of the tournament early and things like that. But no, I think it's good. I think it's good. I get the United fan mentality of, maybe it's a little bit above that level at the moment, but it's a pre-season competition, and I think it's good. I think it's a good thing for
Yeah.
United.
Harry's saying, yeah, nice away trip. And I think it will be, and I think it'll be good. And I think, yeah, it is going to be that kind of thing, everyone getting back together, Champions League exposure. Yeah, it is good in that respect. But what football workhouse field said there, unless we add quality, and that's where I think we're at. I'm just going to touch on transfers now that I've heard that we're adding, and then I suppose Rich, I know you might not know, but just your opinions on these names. If it is, for example, Lucia Garcia, Adriana Leon, Rachel Williams. Those are the names that I've heard so far. I mean, we've heard Emma come on this show and she talked about Gabby George is being open. That's possibly someone that they would be interested. I don't know. But for me, I was excited at the end of the season because I thought, yes, here we go. He's talked about, maybe potentially adding like global. He talked about the Swedish league. He talked about NWSL. Talked about thing. And I remember I pushed Jamie to sort of say, is there going to be any like British signings or signings from the WSL? And so he was asked a question like that, and he sort of didn't ignore it, but apparently he sort of moved on from that and said, no, it's a global market and we want to, so I know other the big Mark detractors were swaying around to, let's see what he can do. And I think he had an okay January window. But I heard Rachel Williams, and I've told you, Rich, from two independent people that are quite well connected in the game, and for me, I can't believe it. That is just, I don't know, I couldn't believe it. I mean, what do you think of Rachel Williams if she did sign for Man United?
I mean, first and foremost, I don't know whether it's true or not. I mean, she's worked with Mark before. She's experienced. I'm sure, obviously, well trusted. She was very, very good, but a certain amount of time ago now, in terms of she was probably the top striker in the league at some point. I don't know. It would be a curious one. I mean, the one thing I'd say with United is they do things quietly, and we don't often hear a lot in advance. And I think that's been a theme across the last couple of years. Whereas across the city, it's a little bit different. Man City tend to things leak, and people tend to know in advance. Obviously, I think Dana, Leia, and Layla all leaked well in advance of them being announced. Whereas United tend to keep things quite quiet. They like to do things quietly. I'll be honest, the vibes I get from speaking to people close to them is they're pretty calm. They're pretty chilled. They seem to know what they want. They're keen to add better players than they have at the minute. I don't know potentially who's going out, but I think they want to bring a fair few in. And yeah, they're chilled. I mean, the thing people have to remember is, and I know it can get frustrating when you're seeing your rivals go out and announce big signings early doors in the summer, but it doesn't mean other clubs aren't doing things. I mean, just working for a club, even, it's a different level, obviously, with Sheffield United, but even just the things we have to jump through to get things announced. I mean, in terms of contracts, we've had players away on holiday for 2-3 weeks. We can't get in. We were in yesterday doing a load, but these are players that maybe signed contracts 3-4 weeks ago, and obviously then won't get announced now for probably another week or so in terms of turning things around, photos, interviews, things like that. We had 2 new signings in yesterday, one of which we cannot actually announce until her contract starts on July the 1st. Some players' contracts start a little bit earlier. It depends on the terms of the deal, if it's a loan or if it's a dual reg or if it's a permanent contract. So, and what you got to remember is the transfer window doesn't actually open until tomorrow. It's not actually open yet, and it's going to be open for 3 months. So I don't think it's panic stations for anybody yet. I know Chelsea and City particularly have been quite active, but nobody else has really said or done anything, but they will all be doing things, and that includes United. But yeah, I mean, I know it gets frustrating, and like I've been there as a fan in the past when I was younger, and you do like you see others signing players, and you want your club to do the same. But United will, and another common theme with United is they do things properly, they get everything set, and then they drop everything all in one go. Like I think the last couple of summers they've probably done 2 or 3 signings in like the space of 2 or 3 days. So I don't get any feeling there's any panic at United. They seem pretty calm. They feel they're doing things the right way. They're walking before they can run. They're actively trying to improve the squad in terms of bringing in players that they believe are better than. Go on.
Who's Rachel Williams better than?
If the coaches think she can offer something, then and like I said, I don't know if that's true. I don't know what the situation is. I think me and you were obviously talking off air as well about this whole new Brexit visa thing. I think the rules have been tightened on it again this year. I don't know to what extent. And I think it leaves clubs like United and other in a difficult position because it does rule out a certain amount of foreign players. Like the top foreign players, it's not an issue. They can get visas because they either have a certain amount of international caps or they've won their league or Champions League games and things like that. But maybe if you're looking at players, I mean, again, we talked about it off record, didn't we? One that you linked with United a lot, even Navarro, obviously now had the injury and looks to be going somewhere else. But I don't believe a player like that qualifies for a WSL visa. So you see players like that linked with England, and I disagree with that ruling, if I'm being honest. I think most of the clubs do as well, but I think we all know why the FA have put it in. I don't like it, and I think it's hampering a lot of players' opportunities, and I think it's hampering clubs. I think it's hampering clubs that can't maybe go out and get the Khadisha Buchanans and people like that just yet. Lucia Garcia, I think that's slightly different. I think she's played a lot of games for Spain lately, so she may have enough points. I don't know. I don't think someone like Navarro would, but obviously I think that ship has sailed now anyway. She's just an example. So clubs are maybe looking more towards domestic talent because I think it's harder to go out and get, foreign players that are maybe not that top level in their leagues or whatever it is. So there's so many moving parts. Like I said, we did a signing yesterday. We can't announce it for at least 2 more weeks. So, you've got all sorts of things, unfortunately, to consider. And I do it. I'm screaming at our general manager all the time, can we do this? Can we do that? And no, can't do this, can't do that until a certain day or till something's signed. And then you've got to go through the other club and talk to them. And then you've got to get your photos sorted and your interviews. And that's just with us. So
yeah, I know it's gonna. I'm not naive to think that we're gonna hear anything today. Even I know someone quite well, Yash, who I've been on podcasts with before, and I get these 2 names. Obrador is her name, the Barcelona one that Man City has signed. I don't even think she's that good a signing, and I think there are better signings, better players in the WSL than her. I think Danea is good, has potential, but has been underwhelming at Atletico. And I think Alexandre is probably the best one out of them all. But yeah, she's not even playing a lot for Spain. So when you talk about, obviously, Chelsea are going to go out and buy whoever else. Yeah, that's great. I don't even think we should be looking at them. I think Man City are the ones that are, if you're going to get the top 3, I think they're the ones, and Arsenal. Chelsea will buy whoever the hell they want. I think we know that. But, I mean, even with Leia, I did hear that Man United were linked to her and she was going to Manchester United. Whether then City has come in and gazumped us, I don't know. But there is that kind of, we are after players. And, for example, I talk about someone who I talked with, Catherine. Caitlin Ford, that was a player we were really in for. I think she was the one that we wanted instead of Brun. And then, obviously, now we just heard she signed a new deal. I get it, and I get that they're working. I'm not asking them to have announced everything by now. I know some people are, but I'm not asking that. I'm just saying, I don't know, with some of the names that we're hearing, and I think that's what people are concerned about. I don't, whether Andrea Leon, she's been linked to Real Madrid, Barcelona, Man United, Brighton. Look at the, where's she going to end up? Her agent's just doing overtime there, I think. So Man United might not even be true. But, like I said, for me, this is one. Atanu, he works very hard. He's on the United Journal. They did a piece recently that said Lucia won't be signed before the Euros. And when we say signed, we don't mean announced to the public. We mean paper on the contract. And, pen on the paper. What do you think? I mean, is that the way it's going for clubs? Do you not think a lot of clubs have signed, or what's normal for clubs? Because you've worked in, what's normal for clubs now? Do you think WSL clubs have signed players and just going to wait until after the Euros to announce, or do you think they're going to wait and to sign them fully pen to paper after the Euros. But then you're running a risk there, because then if she has a great tournament, Barca might come in and try to steal her, stuff like that.
Yeah, I think teams will generally want to have things in place, whether that's announced or not. Obviously, players like Garcia are involved in the Euros, so she'll be on camp shortly, or maybe even now, because I think Spain have a friendly next week and then one the week after. So, whether they can get I don't know. Like, clubs might just think, look, we've got things maybe verbally or in writing, and then we'll get the formalities done after the Euros when she can actually come to Manchester, whether that's Lucia Garcia or any other player. I mean, for us, it's a little bit different. Obviously, we're not signing players that are anywhere near involved in the European Championship, so our summer window is very normal. It's not affecting us. I think any manager, they want to have their business done as soon as possible, but I don't think there's actually a pressure to sign players that maybe are involved in the European Championships this early, because you're not going to have them for pre-season anyway. A lot of the top clubs, and that includes United, because United have a lot of players involved in the Euros, whether that's England players like Mary and Ella and Alessia, whether it's players like Vilda, whether it's players like Jackie, whether it's players like Ona. You're not going to have them for pre-season, so if you don't get players signed until then, it's actually probably more players that are not involved in the Euros that you probably want to try and get done early, because they're the ones that can actually come in. There's going to be a lot of teams short of numbers in pre-season, so they're going to want as many in as possible if they're not involved in the European Championships. I mean, I was talking the other day because we've got a pre-season friendly against a WSL club that has quite a few players at the European Championships, and like we were sort of actually trying to work out what their team will probably look like, and the reality is probably very different to the one that we'd usually face. So, yeah, I think clubs always want to do business as soon as possible. Any manager wants their squad nailed down, but in a tournament year, it's very different, because the reality is your pre-season, you might only have half a dozen players training, and then probably youth team players. So I think if you use someone like Garcia as an example, if that does happen, I would imagine they would be quite a long way down the line with that at the moment. Any signing, I think they'd be quite a long way down the line with. It just wouldn't be publicly known.
Yeah,
But it would not be signed and sealed until after the tournament.
That's what I think. I've heard fans saying to me, why haven't they signed her? Like, no one's saying they have to announce. I think we know with United, it takes, you hear that it's done, like done. And then a month later, she comes, like you say, they do it all at once. No one has a problem with that. It's just, like you say, the City thing, briefing. And like you say, the last brief was she's not signed the paperwork. So that then, I suppose, leads people feeling a bit uneasy. But I think I'm quietly confident that she'll get done anyway. I can't see why not. I think that she wants to come. I think that, we want her, and so but then I suppose if she has top goal scorer, then I think that's sort of what, and especially people are worried about. There's a Swedish player called Joanna Rittinger. I can't even say JRK. Plays for Häcken. She's a winger. She's a very, very good player, highly regarded by lots of technical analysis people that I know. And, that's the kind of player where people are saying, oh, well, if United are interested, surely you'd want some kind of pre-agreement done or something like that before. Because then if someone then goes and has a stellar tournament, then you're Chelsea and you're City, then you're out of it. Look at what happened with Stina. We sort of were talking. I think they thought that was done. Then Arsenal came in and gazumped us. And she's the kind of player that look at the way she's scoring. Oh, it's always going to be one of those things. Tanya just said a name there, Ritting. I can't even say a name. I'm not even going to try. Well, I just want to, I suppose, say on that, Rich, but especially this question because it's been on contracts. I think that's what everyone's waiting for. I think, even if we knew that Honor, Jackie, Leslie were mostly staying, I think most people would be calmer. But I think there's the fact that we're hearing that Honor to Barca, Jackie has a contract, but then allegedly has said recently she's open to offers. And they're all on options. So they've all got one more year left. But I don't know what Russo's position is, but like I've just heard it's not great. Your thoughts on those three players then, Rich?
I think United hold all the cards because, like you say, they all have options in their contracts, and United do very well. I think nearly every single time I get a press release from Man United saying someone signed a contract or someone's actually just signed from elsewhere, it always has an option in their contract. I don't think United actually have many players that don't have an option in their contract. So for me, Owner, Alessia, Shaki, they'll extend those contracts for a year and exercise those options. They've got no reason not to. If they decide they want to go and they don't want to be here for the new season, United can at least be in a position where they can sell them on and get some money for them. But I think they'll probably all stay. At the end of the day, you're going to have to get a big offer to get them away. So again, in terms of it's a little bit difficult in terms of announcements when you're just exercising an option because technically they're not signing a new contract. So I can't remember many clubs like making like big announcements that they've just exercised an option. I think they just do it and then the player is still there. Maybe United will. Maybe they'll do like a roundup at the end of the month. What you got to remember is players are under contract until the end of June. So whatever happens, they're still Man United players, and that again is something we have at Chef. We had a club contact us last week that are taking one of our players that's out of contract and said, can we announce this? And we went, well, no, because technically for another 14 days, she's still our player. And, we will announce our departures at the end of the month when they become not our players. So, yeah, again, I think you just got to remember how early in the summer we are. The season is effectively changed until the 1st of July. And until then, if Man United have cut ties with the player and they're happy to announce it, like we saw with Martha the other day, it can be done. Of course it can. Maybe a contract terminated early so that player can go and get another move. We even saw that in the Championship with Durham the other day. They announced two of their players leaving early because Sunderland were ready to announce them. So it's all moving parts. Like no one deals the same. Just because one player gets announced as leaving at a certain date, it doesn't mean everyone else will. There's so many different contracts can be so complicated in terms of dates they start, dates they end. And like I said, that's just my experience of dealing with it at Sheffield United. I imagine at Man United, it's a whole other level. So, yeah, I mean, I know it's such a boring answer, but the transfer window's closing is 3 months away. It's a long time. It's a quarter of a year. I think if you want to panic, I'd be panicking around.
Listen, I'm not panicked. The only thing I'm panicked on is the name coming in. But like we said, we don't know if it's true. I mean, this is what I think is causing the panic, Rich. I think it is the communication. I think it is poor. I think I don't know. I think we saw a couple of weeks ago. Was it a couple of weeks ago? Last week, the men announced, this is our release list, go in and stay in, and this is who we're negotiating contracts with. But I think we saw all Premier League clubs do it on a set day. So I don't know if there's that needs to be something that's sort of considered, because we've seen some clubs announce it drip by drip, like Man United do, like Martha, and then obviously we know that Smithy, Stanley, Zelly, Diane's out of contract. We know these players are out of contract and they're coming towards the end. We know that's going to be June. So what's that? Another week? Yeah, we've only got to wait. But I think it's the fact that every other WSL club has announced a release list and we haven't. And I just think that, like I said, the Premier League, every team announced it on the same day. And I just think that something like that would be beneficial. Because I think we talk about growing the game, and I just think that leaving fans in the dark, whether it's right that they're getting frustrated or not, whether it's, yeah, of course, things take time, I get it. But I just think leaving fans in the dark is just not a good look, and it just puts people off, and it just makes people, become dissatisfied. And that's not what we want in women's football. We want to keep all the fans that we got.
Yeah, I don't think clubs do it purposefully to keep fans out of the way. And like I said again, this is sort of a boring, sort of administrative answer, but maybe clubs don't even know who's leaving.
Yeah.
Like,
but how can some clubs? How can they do it in the Premier League then? How come they can announce all on the same day release list?
I'm not against the idea of something like that in terms of when you have a set deadline to say this is who's leaving, this is who we've reoffered contracts to, whether they've signed or not. I'm not against that whatsoever, but that's not up to me at the end of the day. But
I know it's not up to you, Rich, but at the same time, saying yeah, we do need something like this. Yeah, fans do need to be kept in the loop, because I just think, I saw Casey saying that about San Diego, the difference between San Diego having 5,000 fans and Man United not, and I think it's deeper than that. It's things like, she talks about going into the community, engaging with your fan base. I just feel like we don't have that in the WSL. Yeah, the players engage. Yeah, they'll go and sign your T-shirt and they'll do that, but that's not enough. I just think, if we want the game to grow, we should be wanting to keep people involved.
I think on the announcements things and whatnot, it is different for every club, and maybe it needs sort of aligning that everyone does things at the same time, and it still leaves that bit of doubt, because some clubs will be forced to say, okay, well, we've offered this player a contract, they might not have signed yet. What I will say is clubs will do anything to minimise the impact of bad news. Like, the one thing I always say at Sheffield United is, I don't want to draw out our departures. Like, if you have 5-6 players leaving, you don't want to do that one by one over the course of 5 days or a couple of weeks or whatever. So for us, it's once we know everybody who is leaving, that's when we'll announce it. For us at the moment, we don't know that. We still have one or two doubts within our squad of, is a player signing for us or is a player signing for somebody else? So for me, I could go out and say, okay, these 3 or 4 players are leaving, but then in another couple of days or a week, I might have to announce another player's leaving. I'd rather not do that. I'd rather wait a week and then find out, is this player going? And if she is, we can do the full list.
Well, we saw with United last season, they don't like that. They just like to drip it. Oh, this one's left, then this one's left. Then they like to do, this one's joined, this one's joined, this one's joined. So you're saying they don't like to drag out news. I think that's where it's probably a bit different. I get where you're coming from, Rich, but I do think that something needs to be done where they do need to get a date where it's all aligned. And like you say, you just have to say, we've offered contracts. Even the men's team had to say, still negotiating. It is what it is. At least then your fans are sort of in the loop. It's just the fact, total darkness. I just think we need to move away from that now. I think, pre-season games, look, we're having pre-season in France. We need to move away from hiding, being secretive. We need to be a bit more out in the open, talk about women's football. And, if it then looks bad and you said things like, we're negotiating with 10 players, well, at least then people have that transparency. I just think the fact that it's in the dark, it makes it more worse for people than people think the worst. Contract negotiations could be going great with all them 3 players that we just mentioned, but we don't know, and because then people are sort of assuming that no options are signed and everyone's just going to walk out. And I just think, I get it, they're not going to say that they're signed, but they are. But, I just think this kind of secrecy, it just doesn't work well for me. But what I think might help, and it's a question that I said I was going to get onto, director of football. We spoke, Rich, about a name, and it came out about Juventus. What do you think about Man United signing a director of football? Who do you think could be it? What do you think about the name that has been linked? I've heard another name linked. I'm hearing they're going for top names. So tell us.
I think it's an interesting concept because it's not really something that has come into the game that much, particularly not in England. Like in the WSL, every club has a general manager. That's a prerequisite of the license. Every club, whether you're in the WSL or you're in the Championship, has a general manager that oversees, the day-to-day running of a club. They sort the contracts, they sort all the administration out. Even with us, it's exactly the same. We have a general manager. I don't think even like many of the top clubs have a sort of head of women's football or a sporting director of whatever you want to call it. Some do, but the roles vary very differently, and that's why you see various different job titles. I don't think any of the top clubs have someone that would come under the name of head of women's football. Some might have a managing director or a sporting director or something like that. I just don't know if the structures are in place at a lot of clubs to need one. In terms of there's not as many staff, there's not as many things to oversee in the women's team. I think it's something that will start to come in. And I actually think if United are genuinely serious about finding someone to do that and finding the right person, I think it's a very positive move because I don't think there's many doing it. So if United are trying to be proactive and find one, I mean, I haven't seen many of the names linked. I'm not going to confess that I'm overly familiar with tons of sporting directors from around the world because the thing about sporting directors is they generally work in the background. You don't really see much or know much about them. I saw the name of the Juventus guy, but I'll be honest with you, that's the first time I've ever heard his name because I'm not overly familiar with Juventus or how they work. So, yeah, I'd be interested to see if it happens, and I'll be interested to see if more clubs do it because I'm going to be quite interested actually just to see how it works and what they do and how they oversee things because I know we talk about how great women's football has become and how much it's grown, but it's still got so much further to go. And
I think Man United need it. I think if you read the article that James Dunker put out, it talks about John being stretched, and John does a lot. John Murta, this is the director of football. He does a lot of our recruitment, and he was solely with Casey doing the recruitment, making sure everything was okay with that. But then he got the job out of the men's, and we all know the chaos that they're in, and that took away a lot of his kind of influence. I'm not going to say influence, but he's the sort of, how can you say, they're a bit more powerful than a general manager. General manager Zoe, let's say, she does a lot of your signings, but she probably does a lot of everything and interacts with fans and does that. Whereas I think, there's a general manager, whereas John probably did the signings, and I think we had a two separate kind of thing. And then obviously when John went over to the men's, we all know the chaos, the this, the that. That's where a lot of his time get taken up. So I was seeing all this kind of, so they're working on recruitment, they're working on this, we're working on that for the men's team. All these separate things, recruitment, transfers, structure, facilities. And I'm thinking they need all that for the women. And then John's tag was "and women's team." Whereas I think the women needs its own thing. The women's needs to focus on its own transfers, its own contract renewals, its own academy coming through, its own improving its own facilities, rather than John trying to do all that for the men and then the women. So I think this person will come in and basically mirror John, be below him, but mirror what he does. So we'll work on the recruitment, we'll work on the facility, improving facilities, ensuring the pathway is correct, all that kind of stuff. Because I feel like I've not really had that United. I mean, talk about analysis and people scouting and stuff like that. And I mean, we spoke off air about Luke and Martin and all these these are coaches, and they should be analysing the next game. Whereas I'm not saying that this director of football is going to take power away from Mark or take it away from a manager. No, I think it'll leave the coaches to coach in a way, and they don't have to worry about every other thing. Because I think we saw with what happened last year with Casey, she did everything. And I think that was a bit on her as well. But I think we need to have someone who's behind the scene, sorting out contract renewals, sorting out this, sorting out that, rather than relying on John, who's probably thinking, who's going to replace Pogba? That's probably his biggest thing, or whatever. We need someone whose sole focus, only concern is the women, because we've got our own issues, And I just think at Man United, everyone's doing everything. too much. You know, there's a lot of split roles. I'm not saying that split roles are bad. It helps probably keep that kind of continuity, helps you feel like one club if people are doing everything, if people know across both sides. But I just think with everything in the women's team, we just need that. And I think the fact that Juventus has it, and they probably started a couple of years before us. Juventus have a sporting director. You know, it just shows that we need one, in my opinion.
I don't disagree. I think it is something that will start coming into the women's game. Um, like I said, that is generally the role of the general managers at the moment, to sort of do all the admin. I don't think it will ever change. You know, at the end of the day, it's the coaches decide who they want to sign because it's the coaches that have to work with them. Whether that's Mark, whether that's Martin, whether that's anybody else. Like you say, it's then on the job of the general manager or the sporting director or whoever it is to go out and get them. And I think it will sort of just merge. I think the general manager thing was something that was set by the FA as a license requirement from day one that every club had to have a general manager. I think you'll start seeing those names now merge into sporting director or head of football or whatever. Maybe the personnel won't change. Maybe the job title will just change. Some clubs might say, okay, we're going to bring in a specialist now that actually is, a women's football expert or has sporting director experience. I think it's something we'll see over the next few years. I still think it's early. I still don't think we'll see many clubs do it. I think it's still quite rare. I'm not going to say I'm an expert on the foreign clubs and what their setups are, like PSG, and I know Barcelona have Markel, but again, that's no real different to having a general manager. It's just a different job title. I'm sure he oversees a lot of the same things. But yeah, I'm not against clubs doing it. I don't think it's necessarily a negative as long as it works. And if a club's happy with it and the coaches are happy with it, then that's
Well,
what it's
we
for.
know Casey walked out because there was issues, and I mean, Tanu touched on it. Steve DeVille, his name's brought up a lot in that Athletic article as being, not complimentary way, and whether I'm not saying, they're going to sack this guy and bring in this new person, no, but I just think there does need to be, Footy Workhouse, it's different, isn't it? It's different. Whether we like to admit it or not, it's the same, we have the same passion, but it's different. And I do think we need someone with experience. We haven't got that. We haven't got anyone other than the coaching staff who have experience in the women's game. So it wasn't just the Juventus one. I've heard Bayern Munich, whether that's true or not, lady, I can't remember which, Bianca Reach. Like you say, there were 6 people interviewed. We don't know all the names, but whether that was one that was interviewed or whether that was just interest. But I've also heard of ex-Leon. Well, I don't know if you want to talk about this, Rich, or if you're happy. Julie Frick, if that's her name. So these are the top quality names for me. That's the level. I want someone who's been in women's football for years and who has got experience of working at big clubs. And I think that's I think that would just, I think when that comes in, people will be more excited over that than any signing, because I think it'll just ease that we know that someone knows what they're doing, if you get what I mean, in the women's game.
Yeah, Julie was at Lyon for a long, long time. I think a lot of the time it was more admin stuff rather than running the whole women's football department. I think she was more sort of in charge of, I don't want to say the boring stuff, but it's important, but travel and things like that, logistics. And I think towards the end, she started to have a bit more of a hand in recruitment and things like that. I think Bianca at Bayern's a good example. I spoke to Bianca quite a bit over the years, and don't know whether that would be maybe less likely because she's still in that job, and it's a job that she's done for a while, and it's, she's been at Bayern Munich a long time, whereas Julie, as far as I'm aware, is still unattached. She left Lyon at the back end of last year. If you were looking for someone, she's worked at the top club, a team that dominated an era of women's football. So if you're going to get someone, you'd want someone of that caliber. Beyond that, like I said, I'm not overly familiar with names because they're not generally the kind of people you speak to as in media. You speak to coaches, you speak to managers, you speak to agents. You don't often get to speak to sporting directors or heads of women's football. So yeah, I think like if it happens, it happens. I think it's still on the agenda. I'm sure they just want to get the right person at the end of the day and not rush into it. And like you say, I mean, it's probably. I think it is a sort of. I think you notice a pattern that United do things a little bit slowly. Maybe they could do things a bit quicker. Whether that's just because people are so swamped, or it's a bit, come on, could you do this a little bit quicker? And things get pushed aside, like you say, especially in the summer when on the men's side it has always been so hectic for the last few years with managerial changes and so many ins and outs. I don't know. I don't think there's a conscientious thing to try to leave the women behind and not focus on it. I think a club like Man United has nothing really to gain by certainly the bad PR that would come with not taking their women's team seriously, especially only 4 years after starting it. I don't know. You might not agree with this. Fans might not agree with this. I think United are generally in an okay position. I really do, and I know you hate the argument of it's only been so and so years and whatnot, and I get that. Like there has to come a point where there's ambition and you want to get above the teams that you're below now. I think season one went as expected. Like I know at the start they played it down that we don't, we're just going to see what happens. Everyone expected United to go up. United expected United to go up, and they did. For me personally, I thought the second group went better than maybe I thought it might. I didn't think they'd just walk straight into the league and be in the top four, and then they got to a cup semi-final. The third season was an interesting one because I don't think it was necessarily bad. I think it was just they started it so well. Like they were obviously top of the league at one point, they were unbeaten, and then the fact they dropped away. I think I said it on one of the podcasts we did about a year ago that it probably gave the perception that they'd done worse than maybe they actually had. I actually think this season, like when you take into account you had a new manager with a completely different style of play, didn't really get to sign any of his own players. The recruitment was largely all cases, certainly last summer. And they had that sort of sticky start, which was probably to be expected with a new coach. I never expected United would take Champions League down to the last day of the season. I really didn't.
To be honest, Rich, they didn't really. I know you're going to say, "Oh,
I know you mean
they didn't," and I'll tell you why they didn't. Because they threw it away. And my friend, we watched back that game, that Chelsea game. I don't know where you were, and if you were watching it, I don't know. But they had that in their hands, and this is what they do time and time. Versus, even my friend was talking about the City games. We played City 4 times, and the first time was a Conti Cup. Okay, yeah, it's Conti Cup, but we took them and we battered them. We ran them off the pitch. Ivana and they just couldn't handle it. And then they had to bring on the white, the this, the bunny, the that. And still Ivana and Carrie ran them ragged. Then there was the game at LSV. They won 1-0 down, probably expected, but they actually showed something there. They actually made me believe that they wanted it. They showed passion, determination, grit to fight back to 2-1, and then they threw it away yet again. For me, I think it's beyond this kind of now. Oh, well, I think there's a lot of players there. I don't think it's Mark's fault. I think there's a lot of players there that shouldn't be there anymore. And we can move on to this kind of thing. I just think we just keep doing this. We were one that we battered Arsenal at their place. Battered them. We should have been 3-0 up at half-time. We weren't. Tooney went 1-on-1. Should have made it 2-0. She didn't. And then they let... there's nothing... people are talking about this Sam Kerr goal. They let her score that goal. I can't... There's... we let Chelsea win that game. I'm afraid we need to move on past this. Oh, well, if this... a bit more... No. They throw it away. They bottle it. Even when Caroline Weir scored at the thing, they should have done better. They went into that game scared, not wanting to lose. So I think there's a lot of players there that have been there for a long time, and I love. And we, let's talk about Steph. Talking about sentimentality, I feel like maybe some of, our fan base is a bit too sentimental, and I love OG21. I love them. I'd do anything for them. I'm hearing bad things that's happening to Amy, and she's upset, and it's hurting me because she's someone who I've known since 2018, and I used to see her, at other games, and Angerad. I know Angerad through knowing Amy, all that kind of stuff. So I love OG21, but their championship. And all the players there now, it's time to sort of say goodbye. Let's sort of get into it as well. Katie Zellum and Lucy Stan didn't make the call up, and this woman was ruthless. She just got rid. Doesn't matter if you've had your best season ever, Katie. Bang, you're not good enough. I want Jill Scott in there. Jill Scott can dominate the middle of a park, probably better than you. And when that's happening, do United fans need to wake up maybe and sort of realise the levels of players and accept that the players aren't good enough? Stop saying it's just the manager. It's the players as well. And I just feel like players get let off the hook, men and women. I look too much. Go, Rich. What do you think? Do we have too many LG21s? We love them, but, is that the reason?
I don't think it's the reason. I mean, it's a byproduct of where United started in terms of, I don't want to say they built a squad for the championship, because you had players like Alex Greenwood, Siobhan Chamberlain, Amy Turner that had all played for England, but the reality is you were never going to draw the top players for a team that was starting in the second tier. But the reality also is you can't just change an entire squad. It takes time gradually over a couple of years. And that process is ongoing. Some have gone, quite a few have moved on. There's some still there. And I think it's just a process that you'll see over the next few years is more will go. You've seen, obviously, Martha Harris has now gone. And I'm sure probably the rest will go eventually. I mean, I think there's some that are good enough to be there, the likes of Galton, the likes of Millie Turner. But yeah, it's just a natural process. United have grown so quickly from where they started. When Man City started, they came straight into the WSL 1 as it was back then. So they kind of had to throw everything at it and go out and sign established top players. And I suppose it's funny now looking back, because United kind of actively said they wanted to do it differently. They wanted to start further down. They wanted to earn their place in the WSL. But if they'd have actually gone in and applied for a license to the WSL, they may actually have had a stronger squad. And maybe they'd have a stronger squad now. I don't know. It's all hypothetical. But yeah, I mean, there's sentiment, but coaches at the end of the day, they want to win. Mark will want to win. Martin will want to win. And for me, I know it sounds really simple, but if there's a player at United and they're under contract, it's because the coaches want them there, and they think they can offer the team something. Because if they can't offer the team something, then there's no point in them being there. So yeah, I mean, I think more will get phased out over the years as more players come in, but I don't think from coaches it's ever necessarily sentiment. Maybe 1%, but even with Serena, I saw a lot of people say she made a big call to leave Steph out, and I get that, but she also said Steph was only a few weeks away. I don't view that as a ruthless decision. I think if the tournament had been a few weeks later, I think Steph would have probably got selected. So coaches they go with players they think they can offer. They've decided, obviously, Martha won't offer them anything moving forward. They've let her go. If other members stay, it means they want them there.
I mean, you're saying it takes time. Why? You just seen Lansell. Apparently, Everton released 10 players. You saw them bring in loads of players. I'm not saying Everton are the ones, but I was speaking to Lansell the other day, and I'm more worried about Spurs overtaking us next year than I am thinking we're going to get City. For me, that's not where we should be. I don't think that we should be there, and I feel like that's going backwards now. we're
Everton's a
looking
good
more
example,
over our
though.
shoulders than City.
Everton's a good example because they did change a lot of their squad last year, and they did bring in a lot of new players. And on the face of it, it looked like a really good thing. It looked like but almost the whole team changed. It was almost like a brand new 11, and they can look shiny and exciting on paper, but it's very hard to get a team to just gel like that. And Everton had a really bad season, like probably worse than anybody imagined. They were actually down the bottom couple of teams in the league, and for the players that they don't get me wrong, they made some questionable decisions as well in terms of changing managers and things like that. But that was a good example of when you change a whole team and it doesn't work. And I think they signed too many players. I think they overdid it. I think they were in a rush to do it. I think what you need to do is you need to sign 3 or 4, and then you need to sign another 3 or 4. You don't sign 8 or 9 in one summer because it's very, very hard, especially when the expectation then is you want to be Champions League, and Everton are they're not near Man City, they're not near Arsenal, they're not near Chelsea. So yeah, I mean that for me is a very good example of how it can go so wrong, and why actually you need to take a little bit of a sort of a more measured approach.
What's your views then, though, Rich? Can you see Man United finishing top 3 next year? And I suppose Marc Skinner was given a 2-year contract. Yeah, he had an option on, like you say, they love their options. But he's sitting there talking a lot about, long term. I'm not saying that they're not thinking long term with him, but it's not very long term to give your manager a 2-year contract. So if he's given a 2-year contract, this is his last year. Do you think it's Champions League or bust for him? Or do you think, no, they'll give him more? Or do you think, this director of football, if we're talking Lyon, Bayern Munich, Juventus, Paris Saint-Germain kind of people maybe coming in, surely they're going to want a manager maybe who's just as good, if you get what I mean. And I'm
I
not
think the
saying he's...
options well to that extent though, because it is a 2-year contract, so they can say, and it's the same with the players. They can essentially say, if this season goes well, then okay, we exercise your option and you get a 3rd year to build on it further. If this year doesn't go well, then bye, we can let you go, and it doesn't cost us anything. And so it's. I actually like the idea of options. I know people joke about it, and that United do it quite regularly, but I think it's actually a really smart thing to do because you can do whatever. If Mark has a great season and they get Champions League or they come close again and United are happy with what he's done and they see that they're progressing and building, they can say, okay, we'll exercise your option and you have another year. And if it all goes wrong and they drop further away and they're not progressing, they can say, okay, bye. And either way, it doesn't cost them anything. So will they get Champions League? Ask me again probably in September. I don't know, because we don't know what the squad is going to look like. We don't know what the other squads are going to look like. I know that's a boring answer, but it's reality. You can't judge them on squads.
But I know. No. Can I tell you what you can judge it on? And you talked about that kind of... It is that dropping away. It is that mentality. And I think that Spurs... Oh, he's gone. He's left me. No, I think that Spurs have a better mentality than Man United. They were able to graft and get a point against us, whereas we sort of let them get that point. They got the 3 points at City early on in the season. They could have fallen apart when it went 1-1, but they didn't. Did they go 1-1? I can't even remember. They got a draw against Arsenal, grafted out that draw. Whereas I just seem that we don't do that. We sort of, unless we start well against big teams, we start well and throw it away. We never can rarely, go behind and then come back, if you get what I mean. So for me, I think it's a mentality.
I think there is a mentality thing there. I think it was evident the Man City game I went to in the Cup when they went 1-0 up and it ended up 4-1. And to be fair, Mark was pretty honest about that afterwards, and he wasn't very happy about it. Mark's not often someone that shows that he's not happy. So the fact that he did on that day was pretty insightful. I think the reality for me is that the three teams above them are just better at the moment, and they've been doing it longer. Chelsea, it took a long time. It took a long, long time for it to happen for Chelsea. Man City, not so much, but I mean the league was nowhere near what it is now. When Man City came in, it was quite easy to go from nothing to the top. And Arsenal have been doing it for decades. Arsenal have been doing it for a lot longer than I've even been involved in women's football. And when I look at United playing the top three, I expect that they might get a result here or there, but I look at Man City and I think they've got better players. I look at Arsenal and I think they've got better players, and I look at Chelsea and I think they've got better players. And it's not disrespecting United. United have some very, very good players, and I think there's a lot of potential there. But I just don't think they're there yet, and they haven't had that opportunity to get it. It's difficult because you kind of need that. You need a bit of luck. You need a good run. You need a cup. You need to get to a final, or like you said, getting that Champions League football would be big. But it's how do you do it? Because, like Man United can't go and get Khadijah Buchanan. They can't probably go and get Dana Castle. So how do you do it? And what you have to do is you've got to back your coach at the end of the day and their way of playing, their way of thinking. And at the end of the day, if that manager says, I want this player for my team, you have to do it. And they live or die by their decisions. If he signs a player and it doesn't work out, it's on him. And he'll be the one that gets the sack. It won't be the player. But for me,
they'll be United that stuck with that player.
But that's happened with the men. I mean, we both support Man United on the men's side, and for the last couple of years, Man United have had a team of players that's been pieced together by 4 or 5 different managers because there hasn't really been a plan in place. There hasn't really been a structure in place. For me,
this is why we need the director of football for the women, because I feel like it's the same. There's no plan. There's no structure for the women.
You back your coach. At the end of the day, that is what they're there for.
Well, can I just say, though, Rich, sorry, you back your coach, so why didn't they back Casey?
No. That's on United at the end of the day. But for anybody, whether you're Marc Skinner, whether you're Gareth Taylor, whether you're Emma Hayes, whether you're Jonas Eidval, whoever, for me, I'm a Man United fan on the men's side, and it bothers me when I see rumours Man United want a player or a manager wants a player, and the club are saying, no, we don't want them.
Can I just say as well, this is coming on to this point here, is it that coaches want these players or is it budget restraints? Because the thing is, Casey went and got Tobin and Kristen, right? Whatever reason, she went and got them. And then the drop off, really, I'm sure she won't. But Thomas and Tobin, I don't think then, did she really want to get Thomas, or was it budget? Is when we're talking about backing the managers, I think we can sort of see with Casey, with what she's saying at San Diego now, that they're not backing their manager. There's all this kind of, even Mark coming out, and I've never heard a manager since Jose come out so publicly and say, we need investment, we need this, we need to do that. And then Emma and Catherine the other day are talking about the budget being cut or not increasing to the levels that it should be. I'm not saying it's a small budget. It's the biggest budget probably outside the top 3. But why is your manager having to come out and say things like, oh, Sam Kerr and all this, you can't get them straight away, but we should be aiming for this, that, and the other? For me, that felt like Jose Mourinho coming out and saying, I want to do this, but this and that. So we're all talking about backing your manager, and if he wants to sign Rachel Williams, but does he really want to sign Rachel Williams, or is that his only option? Or like what he said in the end, does he not know anyone else? But even if he knows someone else, like for example, we know he wanted Ford, and I get it's more than just money, but they're not offering the money that is comparable to what probably Arsenal are offering her. So then you're not backing your manager, are you?
No, I agree in terms of that. I think there's always constraints. Every club in the world would love to go out and all of them have the best players in the world. You know, I'm sure Man United would love to have Alexia Putellas, but realistically, it's not going to happen, whether it's her choice or budgets. Everyone has constraints. I don't think anybody, even Chelsea, even Leon, have a blank checkbook to go out and do absolutely everything they want. So you have to look at what your budget is and decide within that what can you do and what do you want. Can Man United back them more financially? Yes. And I think that will go. I know it sounds really simplistic. You still have to have everything in place, but money's where it starts. You know, Emma Hayes is a good coach. Gareth Taylor's a good coach. Jonas is a good coach. Mark's a good coach. But it's a lot easier if you can go out and buy Sam Kerr and buy Pernille Harder and buy Khadijah Buchanan. Chelsea couldn't do that 4 or 5 years ago. They built slowly. They started to get a few in the door, and they started to invest more than the clubs around. You know, there's a clear pattern. You know, when Arsenal used to spend the most money, they were top of the WSL. Then Man City came in and they started spending the most money, and then they won the WSL. Liverpool had a little spell. You know, Liverpool, and again, slightly different because the league was very different 10 years ago, but Liverpool finished second bottom in 2013. And then they invested heavily, spent a load of money, bought a load of players, and in 2014, they won the league. You know, and then they stopped investing and they dropped down. You know, that it's so simplistic to say, but money rules football. We know it. We've seen it in the men's game. You know, Man City were nowhere till they started spending money. Chelsea were nowhere till they started spending money. Man United, for me, Man United could put anything they want to women's football. They're one of the richest clubs in the world, and it's the same with Liverpool. You know, the fact Liverpool got relegated was embarrassing. So you have to want to do it. Chelsea want to do it. Man City, to an extent, over the years have wanted to do it. They've not always put as much in as people think. Arsenal generally do quite well financially in terms of what they put into it. But, you know, Leon are not one of the biggest clubs in men's football. Like, they're okay, but they put millions into their women's team. Millions to get to where they are now. And if other clubs are going to do that, then they're going to get the success. If clubs don't do that, you're not going to get to where you want to be.
You just said something there. Chelsea want to do it. Arsenal probably want to do it. Leon obviously want to do it. And then you sort of said City. What do you? And I get where you're coming from, because City could have gone and got Buchanan, could have gone and got, you know. So yeah, they want to do it, but maybe not to the level of fans. Do Man United want to do it? That's what I think. So you sort of went there, you screwed up your face a bit about City, and I get why you did that. But the Man United really want to do it, because I think what they do want to do, they want it to be self-sustaining. And listen, in an ideal world, I love it. I'd love it like it is with the men's. I'd love to see our players coming through. I'd love to see Poppy, who's just gone off to Hibs, playing for Man United in the first team. You know, we look at some of even the younger ones, Alicia Hearn, you saw her play, Kira Barry, Ella Cazette. You know, probably a lot of our older dev players are the ones going to be out. So, you know, like Poppy's going, Chloe's going, Rebecca May's probably going. This is just in my opinion. We saw them all holding up their shirts. They graduated. Whether like Neve might get a contract, you know, only God knows. But, you know, we're seeing the older ones graduate and the younger ones coming through. The Kira Barry, your Megan Schofield, who's 16, you know. So obviously they want to have some kids coming through. That's the Man United way. I get it. But do they want to invest, put money in, be like Chelsea, for example? Or do they just want to, suppose, like the men, just sort of, don't know, keep it ticking along kind of thing? Just, we're here, we've got the fans no matter what kind of thing.
I think United do want to do it. I do, from speaking to people. I think they do want to do it, but they want to do it properly. They want to do it on their own terms. They want to put. I think United are doing things behind the scenes. This is the funny thing about like behind the scenes stuff. You don't really see it as fans. Like, and again, I use my own experiences at Chef. Like, and again, it's very different. And like people look at us and go, "Oh, they're still part time." You know, they're not. And don't get me wrong, like that can be frustrating. But there's also a lot of things we do that the club support, that we put things in place for the younger players. Obviously, we're having the under-21s team, and things in terms of facilities and whatnot that people don't see. And I think United just, I don't think they want to run before they can walk. I think they've seen other clubs do it and it hasn't always massively worked out. I think for a club like Man United, once they did it, obviously there was a lot of pressure on them. You know, people kept saying for years and years, why did Man United not have a team? Why are they not in the WSL? And I don't think they did it because they had to. I don't think they ever particularly felt pressured. I think there was always the intention they were going to come in and do it. I do think they want to do it properly, but I think we've seen clubs rush to do things and it hasn't necessarily worked out. And a club like Man United, you know, they're one of the biggest clubs in the world. They know what it's about. And I think they do really want to do it properly, but I think they want to do it on their own terms. I don't think they're going to feel rushed. But at the end of the day, the proof's in the pudding. You know, if in 5 years Man United are not a Champions League team and they're not winning trophies, or in 10 years they're not winning trophies, that's when you sit back and go, well, what are you really doing? You know, and that was at a point where we got to with Liverpool. You know, Liverpool were winning the league and playing Champions League football, and then 4 years later they got relegated, and everyone rightly said, you know, what on earth's going on here? And to be fair, they've restructured, they've brought people in behind the scenes, they've put different people in charge, and they've got back to the WSL. But again, with Liverpool, it's going to be, okay, well, what do you do next? You know, because Liverpool as a club should be up where United, City, Chelsea, Arsenal are. I don't think they will be just yet. I don't think you can go and do that straight out of the Championship, depending on what you spend. But there's a couple of, you know, Everton are another one. Everton have outspent so many clubs. I mean, Hannah Bennison was one of the most expensive transfers anywhere in the world last year. And if you're throwing that kind of money at it, you expect results. And if you are throwing that kind of money at it, you've got to be serious about it. So these clubs
are going to say, though, you talked about behind the scenes, and I just want to do big up, because everything that they're doing, Man United with their academy, you've seen it, Rich. It is. I know you don't like to say this, but it is the best academy in the land. And if you even looked, I don't know if you did. You what?
I said that the last time you came on.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it is. And if you look at Charlotte as well, if you look at just not just Charlotte, but if you look at like all the people around Charlotte, it's like it's a first team. We've no offense to anyone. It's like we've probably got more staff. Charlotte's probably got more staff. No offense, Rich, than Sheffield United. You know, because they are putting that thing, and that's that behind the scenes work, because they want it to grow. And I know that they're putting more coaches into the RTC and all that kind of stuff, and they want it to be that kind of thing. But there's a question here. Paul. No, that's not this one, because he's saying they're cheapskates FC. The Glazers promised Casey they would invest. Where is it? And they have said that they would invest. And I think Mark even said at the end of the season there's going to be 2 new pitches. But for me, I just think Casey walked out because they didn't have the correct facilities. And from what I've heard, it's the change is going to be like, this is going to be the new change. And they are building a gym. I've seen the diggers in building a gym, like their own proper building where they come in and they drive in their own, you know. But for me, we see apartment blocks. There was one the other day in Manchester. Boom, went up. I blinked, I opened my eyes, and it was up. Why is it not being done like that? I mean, we saw with the Super League, Man United. Oh, we're going to invest in our stadiums and all this, and we might get a women's stadium and bring, you know. But now we're going through consultancy, and I get it. It does take time, and it's, you know, it's going to take you know, they're saying once they've done all this, it'll take 500 million, and they're saying that's going to be in debt, that they're going to pay it. But you know, all this consultancy, this and that, I just feel like with the women's team, we haven't got time for consultancy. We need to get it done now, because I do feel like Jackie, Honor, Leslie, these are ambitious players. They're not going to want to sit around and wait for consultancy or wait for whatever, you know, Kira Barry is ready to step up and be the number 9 or whatever kind of stuff. You know, they want to win now. not in 5 years' time. And you know, when Jackie came in, she came in the second year, and she would have been sold. We'll be winning the league in your third year. You know, that's what. You know, there's going to be an interview soon, but you know, I don't want to start giving it people stuff away. Go and buy the Barmy article, but you know, it was a 5-year plan. You know, and it wasn't just 5-year plans. I think it was 5-year plan winning the league. So we're saying in 5 years' time, you know, let's call them out. But the 5th year is now, mate. And this is what I'm saying. You're like Jamie Spencer. Love him, love the guy, great guy. You know, Emma. Oh, be patient. I get it. But the 5-year plan. This is the 5th year. Where's my league title? It's as if we can't say this. Why can't I ask for my league title now? Where is it? Why? Where's the? You know.
Yeah, I mean, I think potentially United maybe underestimated the size of the challenge. I'm not privy to everything that's going on behind the scenes, but all I can say is people that I speak to, either at United or people that know what's going on at United, everyone seems pretty happy with where they're at. There is, from what I gather, a pretty clear structure and a plan in place. And, you know, I know Mark polarizes opinion. I get that, but I do genuinely think between him and Martin, they have two of the best people running it. I really do. Martin's a massively respected coach. You talk to anyone, like, he's been around the game a long, long time. And the thing with Martin is as well, he watches everything. Like, he knows everyone. He watches every league, like, religiously. So if there's a player out there, whether Mark knows them or not, I'll guarantee Martin does. And, you know, they have their analysts and people like that. So the proof's in, this is what I mean. Managers, coaches, clubs, everyone, they fall on their own sword, you know, at the end of the day. And if this, you know, if they don't back it, if they don't spend, if they don't go out and buy the players they need to, then it's on the club. But if they do, and they go and Mark comes out at the end of the window and says, you know what, we had a great window, that we got everybody that I wanted, it's on him. It's on him and Martin. And if they're not in the Champions League or they drop further away than they were this season, it's on them. You know, they're the ones with the contracts, and if they don't do the job, they won't be getting their options. So for me, the club have every reason to back them because it takes all the responsibility away from them. If they don't spend money, it gives everybody an easy excuse. It gives the coaches, it gives the fans, it gives the media, you know, an easy way of saying, well, you didn't back your manager, so you're not going to get
this. This is why, though, as well, I don't like all this talk of, oh, well, you're just so young. 4 years isn't young. 4 years, you know, like you said, 5-year plan, we should have been on the way, you know, and they've messed it up. Really, that's what's happened. They've messed it up because they had the perfect person there to blame. Yeah, like you say, it was on the manager because she messed it up the first time round. Whether we like to admit it or not, I don't care. She messed it up. They bottled it, and that was on her. And she had 2 World Cup winners. Yeah, but then the second year, so that would have gone in. So if she had stayed, you know, this would have been and then the signings that she brought in wouldn't have probably done any better because these are all her signings in the summer. You know, the only thing that I would have said, she would have played Vildemore, and that's then, I suppose, leads into this. Do you think he'll do better year 2? Do you think he'll learn from his mistakes? And I know you think he's the best thing, but he does need to play Vildemore. He does need to rotate more. Whether we like it or not, it's towards the end of the season, Tooney was dying on her feet. I think that's potentially why she's not playing tonight, because he just drove her into the ground. And I think a bit with Leslie as well. I think there was a lot of injuries, so he had to, you know. But, you know, I want to see more, whether he doesn't rate certain players and then they're going to go, and now the ones he likes. But, yeah, he has to rotate now. You can't be bringing Tooney on versus Durham and all these kind of teams. You know, you want Tooney at her best against the big teams, and, you know, he needs to learn, like you say.
Yeah, I mean, every manager needs to rotate. that's even a conversation we've had this season, because our last 2 seasons have unravelled around the Conti Cup games, but it's a little bit different with us because we don't quite have that depth. But I mean, in terms of Vilda, like, I don't know. It's always a weird one when a manager comes into a squad that's been built by somebody else, because Vilda was obviously bought and recruited by Casey, for Casey's system and Casey's way of playing. And if she, I always feel boring saying this, but it's the truth. And I always say it when we talk about England as well, is they watch these players every single day, like from morning till dusk in training. They know absolutely every little thing about them. They'll have every bit of data. They'll have constant clips, constant videos. They'll film train, because even we film training at Chef, so they'll watch everything back. They'll know who fits into their system. They'll know who gives them what they want. And if Vilda doesn't give Marc what he wants, then she's not going to play. And that's not me singling her out. You asked about that. I'm sure there'll be others. And this is the problem of when you give a manager somebody else's squad. And it is why you do have to back your manager, because it has to be Marc's squad. And it's not going to happen overnight. Obviously, you're not going to bring in 23 new players and get rid of the 23 that you're working with, but you have to sort of mould it. I'm sure there's many players there that Marc does want and that do fit into Marc's style of play, because we saw it at times last season. But at the end of the day, if there's a player you don't want, there's no point in them being there. And if there is a player out there that you do want and that's within budget and that's attainable, you've got to go and get them. It has to be on the manager. That's why they're there. And if Marc brings in Lucia Garcia, or he brings in Adriana Leon, or he brings in Rachel Williams, or whatever, whether fans like it or not, it's on him at the end of the day. If we're sat here in 12 months and they did sign Rachel Williams and she does nothing, it's on your manager. It's absolutely on your manager. If the club go out, and I don't think this really happens in women's football because there's not as much at stake, but again, we've seen it with the men. I think it's pretty evident. Man United, even maybe Chelsea, City have gone out and bought players in the last few years in the men's game for the sake of it. They've bought them because they're big names. They haven't always bought them because the manager wants them. And it never works out. It doesn't matter how good that player is. It never works out. So even if the player that you want isn't as good, maybe, if it's someone you want for your system and you trust them, the club, for me, has to go out and do it, because the club can take responsibility away from themselves. They can throw it on the manager. And if United have a bad season, United can come out and go, well, thanks, Marc. We gave you 2 years. We signed who you wanted. It hasn't worked, so goodbye. If they don't back him, he'll turn around next year and go, well, what did you expect? You didn't give me the players that I wanted. And for me, I know it sounds really simplistic. This is not just about Man United. It's not just about Marc Skinner. It's about anywhere. But absolutely anywhere. And you don't always get your targets. Football is not that simple, unfortunately. There might be a player Man United say, we want them, can you go out and get them? And they go somewhere else, or they don't want to leave. And then you move on to plan B, or you move on to plan C. Football, unfortunately, isn't perfect. There's curveballs come up every single day. Trust me, I see it going through our contracts and our transfers. You think you're signing a player, and then the next day you're not signing that player. Or you think a player's signing a contract, and then the next day they're not signing a contract and they're going to someone else. So it's a nightmare. And again, that's part-time level in the Championship. So for me, it's always on your manager. And I know that you don't want Rachel Williams, or you don't want this, or you don't want that. And I get that. I completely get that. But if that is who your manager... Man United went out and hired Marc Skinner for a reason. That's that. So if you hire that manager, you back them. Even if the club might be thinking, what on earth is he? Why is he signing her? Why is he signing this player? You've got to do it.
Can I just say, if we do sign Gabby George, I remember when we were linked to Gabby George, Casey first season, and they went out and got McManus instead. And then I remember we played Everton, and the song was, oh, Gabby George, could have been a red. We got McManus instead. Oh, and that's what we sang to her. And we all laughed. Yeah. How embarrassing now. No. Please, I beg you, don't embarrass me like this. I just know. That was a song, mate, that we used to sing to her. I know he's not going to take that into account, but this is where we're at now. We laughed.
I get it, but as a
fan,
do you want the club to back your manager, or do you want the club to do?
Not if it's Gabby George and Rachel Williams. No, sorry. I want him to be. If that's the best that you can come up with, Rachel Williams. I'm sorry. Thanks for everything.
Well, that will be the situation, won't it? If that is what he does and it doesn't work out, then next year he probably will be gone.
Yeah.
And that's why it has to fall on your manager. It has to fall on your manager, and that's not.
Well, like you say, I think it has to fall on the club. I mean, there's something that Vicky said. I heard that as well. I just think that what is the reason this club, and I think they do need to come out and say it soon. I think they need to come out and explain to everyone why they restarted this women's team. Because for me, it'll always be on the club. It'll always be on the club anyway. Even if Mark goes and signs the whole Birmingham team, it'll still be on the club. But yeah, Rich, mate, been going on. We could carry on talking all day. I hope it's not been too negative on you guys, but like I said, I had to get everything out. I just had to get out my feelings, had to get out, I suppose, everyone's feelings. Everyone's feeling frustrated. And I think, yeah, it's the way that the club run it, but it's just, I don't know. It's Manchester United. I don't think there's anyone in the whole club, any fan, even if it's fans who just watch the men's team, are happy currently right now. So at least we're all equal in that respect. Directive football is very important. I think that's the most positive piece of story that we talked about today, really. The kind of level that they're looking at there, hopefully that can change it all around. But Rich, if anyone wants to speak to you, find out what you're doing, read articles from you, interact, how can they get in touch?
No, I don't want people to.
Fair enough.
I think most people seem to know where I am by now, especially United fans. But yeah, I'm not hard to find. I'm always on Twitter, as you know. So I'm always happy to talk and answer questions. I can't always answer them. And usually I give quite boring answers because at the end of the day, like you say, it's on the club. And when the window shuts on September the 9th or so, I can't even remember, it's so far away. Maybe we'll do another pod and see where we're at. But yeah, the transfer window opens literally in 3 hours. So maybe, I don't think we'll see like a flurry, but I think towards the end of June when contracts start running down, that's when you'll start to see more things happen.
Yeah, guys, thanks a lot, Rich, and I'll definitely see you soon. 2 shows next week, guys. Wednesday, we're talking about away support in the WSL. Do we need away ends? And then we're talking just fan bases and how we've seen the change. And then Thursday, I've got Sandra from The Sun. I know no one likes The Sun, but I think Sandra's a great journalist. Definitely come and check it out Thursday because she knows a lot about this Lyon. It's all going through her. Barcelona, Real Madrid, Man United, Brighton, apparently all want Adriana Lyon. So we'll talk about that one, definitely. Do we really want her? Only God knows. Thanks, guys. Let's watch the second half. See you at the Euros. See you, Rich.
See you later.